Hey there, Austin Meyer with X-Plane here today with Mike Brown at X-Force PC, and today we are going to talk about how to land the SpaceX Starship on Mars. So we are going to go through the 3 steps required to land a SpaceX Starship on Mars. And these 3 steps, I believe, will apply to the real Starship, and if you fly X-Plane Starship on an iPad, you will go through all these steps to land in the simulator as well. But before we go to the 3 steps to land, I'm going to go to step 0, which is a little bit of math here. Here's a little kid hanging onto the merry-go-round from hell, right? The merry-go-round spinning round and round. He's like, ah! You know, he's like hanging on for dear life. If he loses his grip on this spinning merry-go-round from hell, which way is he going to go? He's going to go this way or this way? Which of these arrows is showing which way he's going to go if he lets go?
Well, I think he's going to go both. He's going to head to that way and he's going to go that way.
Everybody thinks that. But
you say he's going to go straight out?
There is no question, without any possible doubt at all, this is actually the velocity vector he's going to carry. And if you don't believe me, let me ask you this.
But he's going to get further away, right?
Does this not get further away?
Well, yeah, so I said that way and that way.
Nope, it's this way and this way only. And
well,
this
I know,
way
I mean
does
a combination of these two
Nope.
directions.
This is not going to happen at all.
It's not going to happen at all.
Nope, it's just this. All right, let me ask you this. You got a gun. You're a gun owner. Welcome to South Carolina. You got a gun. Let's say you've got a gun right here and you pull the trigger. Which way is the bullet going to go?
Well, straight that to the left.
And does it make any difference if the gun is riding the little carousel? When you get the gun here, which way is the bullet going to go?
Same direction.
Yeah, there we go. And so this kid is no different than a bullet coming out of a gun. It's going to go in whatever direction it leaves the barrel. That's what way it's going. And so if this kid lets go, his velocity is going to continue in the exact same direction it was at the moment he let go.
So the force we're feeling on our hands is our direction is continuously changing.
Yes, it's continuously changing. This is the way he wants to go from inertia. Inertia just says keep going in the last direction.
And the merry-go-round keeps trying to bend that arrow.
Pulls him around. And so what he's doing is he's hanging on for dear life to take what inertia wants to go this way to keep forcing his flight path to come around this way.
Gotcha.
This is a complete red herring. This is something you feel, but the moment you let go, that feeling goes away. You are going to travel. So it's just like throwing a bowling ball, shooting a gun, you know, whatever you want to call it. At the moment he lets go, his velocity will be unchanged. He will continue going in the direction he was going at the moment he let go. This way.
All right, time to head to the playground.
Okay, time to head to the play. Yeah, this would be a fun enough experience.
I'll spin it, by the way.
But the bottom line is you want to keep going in the same direction. A body at rest remains at rest. A body in motion remains in motion. And what you're doing with your hands is pulling that flight path around to stay connected to the merry-go-round. And that's what you're feeling with your hands. So that's the basic. Now let's land a Starship on Mars. Step 1. This is Mars. This is a Starship. This is the velocity coming in.
And that must be atmosphere, all those lines.
And this is atmosphere. This is atmosphere. Yep, these lines. So here's the thing. Orbital velocity over Mars is 13,000 kilometers per hour.
Compared to, by the way, what is it on Earth?
A little higher because Earth's a little heavier.
Okay.
But okay, so it's 13,000 kilometers orbital velocity. So what that means is if you're going 13,000 kilometers per hour, well, gravity's pulling you down, but centrifugal force is pulling you out, and the two cancel, and you're in a perfectly round orbit. When the Starship hits Mars, it's going to be going 26,000 kilometers per hour. Do you know why that is? Why it's going to be going twice the orbital speed?
Well, from previous videos, I know that Mars's gravity is pulling it towards it, and it continues to accelerate the closer it gets.
And how long is Mars's gravity pulling the Starship towards it?
I forget. It's like a few months.
Well, technically 9 months. It's a 9-month mission.
Okay.
You might say, oh, well, leaving Earth, Mars gravity isn't affecting it. Well, maybe not very much, but it's still out there. And so for the entirety of the journey, the spaceship is getting sucked into Mars like a suction by gravity. And so by the time the spaceship gets here, it's going 26,000 kilometers per hour, twice orbital speed. What is the flight path that this ship wants to describe if it approaches Mars at twice orbital speed?
Physics wanted to do.
Yeah, what does physics want to do?
Okay, yes, it wants to keep on going. It would bend the flight path a little bit, but it would keep going.
Exactly. It would bend the flight path a little bit from gravity, but it'd keep going. In other words, the Starship would continue past the red planet just like a bullet fired from a gun, or like the little kid if he lets go with the merry-go-round. Now, if we go past the red planet at 26,000 kilometers per hour, what's going to happen to the Starship?
Well, you've just extended the mission significantly.
How much?
Indefinitely.
Indefinitely, right. You go out into space. You go out into space. So, why don't we... All right, first of all, we have to slow down to land this airplane?
Yes.
Okay, how do we slow down? Why don't we just turn the little tail end of the rocket forwards, burn some fuel, and slow down? Get the retro rockets, baby,
most of our fuel, you know, we need what fuel we have, and we've used a lot of our fuel already, and we've got to have a little bit of fuel left to actually touch down.
So do we have enough fuel just to slow down with gas? Put it in reverse, hit the gas, and slow it on down? No. Correct. We don't have enough fuel. It's not even close. So we're going 26,000 kilometers. We're twice orbital speed. Inertia would take us right past the red planet. We don't have enough fuel to slow down with fuel. So how are we going to slow this airplane down?
Well, we're going to use some free braking, and we're going to use the atmosphere to do that braking.
Great. So why not just go, whoop, that'll use the atmosphere for braking. Why don't we just come in this way? Come in and use the atmosphere for braking and land. Let's just do that. Whoop.
There's not enough
Simple.
distance traveled within the atmosphere to dissipate enough of the speed.
Exactly. I've done this in the sim. You would be doing 75 or 100 Gs of deceleration from atmosphere braking near the end, and then you would impact the terrain at many, many, many times the speed of sound, many thousands of miles per hour.
At 26,000 kilometers per hour, how long do you have to slow down at however many Gs to get to zero? Like, what is the total G-forces over a period of time?
That's the question. If you want to take a long time to decelerate, but your flight path is going out past the planet, how are we going to do this? How are we going to decelerate? We have to decelerate over a long period of time.
We need to enter the atmosphere and stay in the atmosphere and control that by using the little fins on the side of the craft.
Exactly. And how do we stay in the atmosphere when inertia wants to take us right out past?
Well, we can either point our nose down or we can point our butt down.
That's right. What we're going to do is we're going to flip the ship upside down and point the nose down.
Nose down. All right.
And then as we flip the ship upside down and point the nose down, the lift of the vehicle, I'll use the blue line for lift. The lift of the vehicle. Look which way the lift is pulling us. What is the lift of the vehicle doing? If we flip the ship upside down, point the nose down, which way is the lift going to go?
It's going to try to force us downwards.
Is that any way similar to this?
Yes. Yep.
It's exactly the same thing.
Yep.
This little kid is hanging on to dear life to bend his flight path around so he can stay on the merry-go-round. The Starship will invert itself and push lift down to the center of the planet to bend its flight path around so it can stay in the Martian atmosphere. And as you just figured out, you have to stay in the Martian atmosphere for a long time to have time to slow down. Because we can't slow down at 50 Gs or 100 Gs. We have to slow down gradually, so we have to be in the atmosphere a long time. Exactly like a kid is trying to stay on his merry-go-round for a long time. We have to stay in the atmosphere, and so we invert the ship, lower the nose, and the lift sucks us in towards the center of the planet. What would happen if we came in too shallow? Compared to our target, what would happen if we were up in the thin, tenuous air near space? What happens if we come in too shallow?
Slow yourself down some and then continue on into space.
Exactly. It's like the little kid. Imagine the merry-go-round is now slippery. It's covered in Vaseline in his hands. He's like, no, 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 and he can't hold on anymore. That's what happens if we come in too shallow. There's not enough air to get enough lift to pull us down to the center of the planet. If we go in too high, it's just like you said. You lose some speed, but not enough, and you go into deep space. Just like the little kid having Vaseline on his fingers while he's trying to hold on to the merry-go-round. What happens if we come in too steep? If we produce too much downforce and we hit the lower atmosphere while we're still doing 25,000 kilometers per hour into the thick air?
Well, something similar to that test the other day.
Yeah. Kaboom.
Kaboom.
And why kaboom? Why would going down into the deeper atmosphere at 25,000 kilometers per hour destroy the ship?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, you'd be generating probably more G-forces than it's rated for.
Exactly.
And you'd kill the astronauts.
And everything else, yeah. The temperatures and the pressures and the G loads would all go through the roof. So the bottom line here is, if you go into shallow, that's like the little kid having Vaseline on his hands. He flies out. He can't hold on. There's not enough atmosphere. It's too thin. You can't get that lift to the center of the planet. You can't hold on to the planet's atmosphere. You got to hold on to the planet's atmosphere. You can't do it if the atmosphere is too thin. Out into space you go. You come down too low, the G load is just through the roof. And you're going to rip the ship apart. Airliners, how fast do airliners go?
Or 400 knots, maybe?
Yeah, maybe even 500 knots.
Yeah.
What would happen to an airliner if it was going 500 knots down at sea level? Do you know?
Might rip the wings off.
Oh, yeah. It would destroy the airplane. At least technically. If it didn't destroy the airplane,
yeah, the
it would be
overspeed on that
at
down at, let's say 1,000 feet is what, like 200 or something?
300 knots or so. 300? Yeah, I don't know the exact number. Again, someone will look it up in the YouTube comments. But it's something in the ballpark of like 300 knots. Yeah. But they travel at like 500 knots. And the only way they can go so fast is because they're up there in the thin air. If an airliner were to come down to low altitude and still be at the high altitude cruise speed, it'd be over structural limits because of the thick air. It only can go that fast in the thin air. Same thing with the Starship. If you were to come down low, the air gets so thick that you're going to rip the ship to pieces. So you're flying along, you're holding it at a point in the atmosphere where you can get enough lift to hang on to the atmosphere and pull yourself down. But you're not pulling yourself down so much that you get into the thick air and over-G the airplane. When do you have to stop playing this game? You're bleeding off speed. The speed is coming down. The speed's coming down. You're hanging on to the atmosphere like the kid hanging on to the merry-go-round. Your speed's coming down, down, down. When do you finally get to say, oh, thank God I don't have to keep holding on to the atmosphere to keep from being flung out into space? What speed does that
there's
happen?
going to be a target speed they have to get down to, which is a certain number. I don't know that number. But when that number hits, then that's when you start planning your flip maneuver and your Raptors turning on and all that.
Here's what speed that is. Orbital speed. Because whenever you're below orbital speed, does gravity want to pull you down or does inertia want to pull you into space?
It's a cancellation, I guess.
Exactly. It's a cancellation at orbital speed. And what about when you get below orbital speed?
Then you start to drop.
Exactly. So you only have to hang on for dear life when you're above orbital speed, because that's when the centrifugal force is trying to pull you out. Right at orbital speed, they cancel. Right there, you can just be weightless at that point. And then below orbital speed, gravity makes you want to drop towards the center of the planet.
So what does the craft do when you hit orbital speed?
At that point, if you are producing no lift, you also won't be climbing or descending, or accelerating out or accelerating inwards. You're just neutral.
Right, but what's the next step in the flight, though, after that?
Now, if you are at orbital speed at 10 p.m., then you're slightly below orbital speed at 10 p.m. in 1 second, because you're slowing down.
Yeah.
So as you slow down...
Yeah, because you're still in air. Even though you're at orbital speed, you're still in air. You're not in space.
So you're still decelerating.
You to slow down, yeah.
Now, when you're below orbital speed, if you're at orbital speed at time 1, you're slightly below orbital speed 1 second later. Now, how do you fly this airplane now?
Well, I assume then you do some sort of flare like you were landing a plane.
Exactly. Boom, a flare like you're landing a plane. That takes us to step 2. So step 1 is the kid on the merry-go-round. Hang on to the atmosphere for dear life. Inverted, upside down, producing lift to the center of the planet so you don't get flung into space. Step 2, you're below orbital speed.
And then that nose just keeps coming up more and more as you slow down, right?
It can, absolutely. And so what you've got here is the atmosphere, and I kind of drew the atmosphere thin up high and kind of thick down low. You see how I hatched the atmosphere? When the Starship is up here, I guess we'll use a blue one for the Starship. When you're in the thin air, you're going fast. You're still going pretty fast. I mean, you're up close to orbital speed. I mean, that's still pretty fast. It's like 8,000 miles an hour on Mars. In the thin air, you have some lift and some drag. Now, as you descend into thicker air, are you going to get more lift or more drag? I mean,
you're going to lift. You get both of those.
Yeah, exactly. Are you going to get more or less lift and drag? That's what I meant to say. But yeah, as you descend, you get more. And then as you get more, what does that do? Does it cause you to descend fast?
Slows you down.
And then as it slows you down,
you get less lift. But then you're in thicker air, which gives you more lift.
Exactly. And you play this game all the way down. The more you slow down, the more you settle. The more you settle, the more air you get. The more air you get, the less you settle. So you use the air to slow down. And then that lets you settle down a little more. And so on and so forth It's like getting into a hot tub.
And what Gs
basically.
are we at right now?
We could easily be near the end of this. We could be approaching 4/10 of a G. Oh, we could which is Mars gravity. You can ultimately find yourself, and I do this in The Sims sometimes. It's so fun. You get yourself down to maybe 10,000 feet or so, and raise the nose just enough to have 4/10 or Mars, gravity of lift and a minimum of drag, and you can sail down across Mars, looking out the window like you're in an El Camino coasting down Hollywood Boulevard. You're just like, yeah, it's like you're just like a lowrider just kind of cruising across Mars like this, looking out the window. Because the spaceship is so big and so heavy, and the air is so thin, there's not a lot of drag. You can just sit there and coast along with inertia for a long time, like a lowrider cruising down the road. You ain't going to get stopped too quick, but you can. So let's say that you're doing that and you're going to overshoot your landing site. Okay, you wanted to land, here. Let's say you wanted to land here. Okay, but you do what I just described, which is have the nose only up about 15 degrees, just, have enough lift to hold you up, not a lot of drag, and it's clear it's just like a lowrider cruising down the avenue, where somebody pushed you, and let you go, and you're just coasting. And it's clear you're going to coast right past your landing site. Now, forget about fuel, okay? We're still not using fuel. We're still going too fast to slow down with fuel. We don't have enough fuel, so take fuel out of the equation. What are you going to do when you see you're going to overshoot your site? What's your option?
Well, I would say you'd either pick a new landing site, or
let's say you can't do that.
You continue on and try to go around all the way around the planet again, I guess.
Don't have that kind of inertia. We got a lot of inertia. We don't have that much inertia. So here's what you do.
Well, you go completely vertical, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Pop that nose way up into a stall. When you pop that thing up into a stall, do you have more lift or less lift?
Less lift, but a lot more deceleration of your horizontal velocity.
Exactly. And if you have less lift, if you were going to do like this, if you're going to do my little El Camino lowrider down the avenue, and you were going to go like this at 15 degrees angle of attack, and then instead you're like, whoa, no, pull this thing up into a 90-degree angle of attack. We're stalled. You just said when we're stalled, we have how much lift?
Basically zero.
And how much drag?
100% that we could possibly have.
Yeah, a ton more. Well, now, which flight path are we going to follow? The low ride past your landing site and never land? Or,
the second one.
Exactly. So in other words, as you're going, this is where it really gets weird. If I'm the Starship, okay, and that's my landing site, and I got the nose up like this, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm riding through the Mars atmosphere. This is pretty. Oh crap, I'm about to miss my landing site. Do I lower the nose to aim at the landing site, or do I raise my nose away?
How do you raise it?
Because I am too high, I will raise the nose.
Now it's important to note that on Mars, computers will be handling all this.
Maybe.
For the app,
just remember, for the moon landing, Neil Armstrong did take over when the computer failed. Now let's do the other way around. Let's say my nose is up 50 degrees. I'm up here, I'm kind of stalled. I'm at a stalling angle of attack. I got turbulent air, and I see that I'm not going to make it to the site. I'm like, oh crap, I'm going to come up short. I'm not going to make it. What do I need to do?
Lower the nose.
Exactly. Lower the nose.
And fly it like a plane.
Exactly. Lower the nose and fly it like a plane. So if you can't make it, lower the nose. If you're going to overshoot, raise the nose. It's the exact opposite of what you think. And the reason is we're operating way on the back side of the power curve, behind. We're at such a high angle of attack here that raising the nose more will spoil the lift and add the drag. So we play this game getting the thing as slow as possible, aiming at your target with drag, and we do this until we get down to 2,000 kilometers per hour. We burned into the atmosphere at 26,000 kilometers per hour. We use aerodynamic drag to get to 2,000 kilometers per hour.
So that's 90% of our velocity, but how much of our inertia?
All right, so velocity goes to the inertia squared, or kinetic energy goes to speed squared.
So it's 1/100th of our inertia, right?
Is all that's left, exactly. Yeah. We burn 99% of our kinetic energy in the air. 99%.
Yeah, I guess it's kinetic energy, not inertia.
Same thing. One's just a word for another. But so we just used the atmosphere of Mars to burn off 99% of our kinetic energy, which means our fuel demand went down by 99% by using the heat shield. It saved us 100x the fuel. So
Not bad.
once you're down to, yeah, not bad at all. So once you're down to 2,000 kilometers per hour, you don't have enough lift to stay in the air anymore. You're starting, now at this point, you're starting to fall. At this point, you see the dirt coming up at you. You're starting to fall. You don't have enough lift anymore. The air is so thin, you're like, damn, the air is too thin. I can't stay in the air. I'm coming down. I'm coming down. So then what do?
Well, that's when you start to rotate and use the Raptors.
Step 3, retropropulsion. It's and this one, no human can do this. It ain't happening. I mean, trying to do this in, maybe if there is a whole new guidance mechanism you could, but what I did is I wrote an autopilot to do it for us. You hit the landing Raptors, it turns this little tail in the direction you're gonna go, hits the gas and retro lands. And then that's on an autopilot. Now.
And Mars is not flat, apparently.
No.
According to your drawing.
Well, oh my God, the craters and hills and everything and mountains are insane.
Yeah.
They're insane.
Well, it looks
on
like
Mars.
it's been shot with like 1,000 bullets, but those are all meteors, I assume.
Well, this is just a flame. This is just a flame.
No, I'm
out.
talking about the surface of Mars.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because
they're
the
all
meteors can't all burn up in the atmosphere like
because
they
there's
do
not enough
on,
atmosphere.
yeah,
Right.
like they do on
we are
Earth.
protected by meteors here on Earth by the thick atmosphere. Mars only has 1% of the atmosphere.
And every now
of
and
Earth.
again one sneaks through.
Yeah, but it's rare. But on Mars, there's only 1% of the atmosphere. It's constant. And the mountains and the valleys on Mars are bigger than the mountains and valleys on Earth, even though the planet is smaller. And so comparatively speaking, Mars is like
So you
nothing
create
like
a settlement on Mars. Are you just rolling the dice that one of those meteors doesn't hit the middle of your building?
Yes, maybe. But here's why this gets fascinating. Mars gets hit by meteors all the time, right? The whole planet is covered with meteor impacts. There's just craters everywhere.
But over billions of years.
Exactly. It's over billions of years.
So your odds
and so maybe
are
it's a
still
mean
low.
time between meteor impact of 10,000 years. In the cosmic cycle, that's an eye blink. For us, that's forever. Heck, if it's 10,000 years between meteor strikes, and let's say we're halfway, to the next meteor strike, the next big meteor strike is happening in 5,000 years. Well, we'll probably have cold fusion, nuclear reactors at that point to send up a little satellite to steer the meteor around.
Or maybe lasers.
Or lasers. We could laser the meteor at that point in the game, or land it softly on the planet and use it as a new amusement park or something. I mean, who knows what we could do. So in other words, yes, Mars is constantly being hit by meteors. That makes it look like a terrible place to possibly live. But human technology is changing at so much faster than the cosmic scale. It may be by the time the next big meteor comes to Mars, for us, avoiding it is just like, driving to the Quickie Mart for a coffee. It's just like, okay, just grab that, push it out of the way, or land it, or whatever you want to do. And also, there are plans to terraform Mars to get more atmosphere, which would then protect the planet from meteor impacts anyway. So at any rate, this is 3.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
Are you saying that we can cause climate change?
Yes. Yes.
Well, wait a minute now.
All right, South Carolina or not.
So there's a plan.
Yes.
There's a plan
To
to
increase-
cause climate change
Yes,
on Mars.
on Mars, right, yeah. So what my theory is, Earth is beautiful the way it is. Let's not mess it up. But Mars could be quite a bit warmer and wetter to benefit us. Okay, now we're going to go just a little bit into the weeds here. Can you tell me what such an autopilot would try and do for this retropropulsion landing? Like, how should it steer and how should it do the throttle? Like, just use English terms. How would you design an autopilot? What would it do?
What your brain would like to do is say, first I'm going to get rid of all my horizontal velocity.
Right.
Okay, so now I'm just straight over the ground. And then, okay, now that I've got that out of the way, now I'm going to switch my brain and I'm going to lower the rocket straight down. But the smart thing to do is to fire the rocket so that your horizontal velocity stops at the exact same moment your vertical velocity stops and you land.
That's it. And you see it right there.
And he did not tell me that beforehand.
No, I did not know. That was not pre-planned. That is correct. Now, if you want to have a margin for error, you will have your horizontal velocity stopped a few hundred meters above the ground. Just for margin for error.
Right.
I did not bother to code that into the algorithm. So my algorithm does the thing you just said, which is try to cancel out the horizontal and vertical at the same time. And so it's just an arc that terminates right there on the surface.
Plus, there's probably some cameras or something on there that are looking for little imperfections in the ground to say, oh, we were going to land right there, but we're going to move over 100 yards because there's a big rock right there or something.
Right. If they don't have, I guess there's not going to be a landing pad for the first mission, right?
Right.
So, I guess that is what they'll do. And just what's kind of interesting, the way we think about this is when we want to cancel out our velocity in both directions at the same time, you basically use an angle of attack indication. You know, the angle of attack is how far your nose is above or below your flight path. You just go for an angle of attack of 180 degrees. In other words, whichever way you're going, point the tail there. Don't point the nose there, point the tail there. And if you point the tail whichever way you're going and hit the rockets, you'll always slow down.
Okay, for someone who hasn't used this app before, you talk about raising the nose and lowering the nose and all that.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Oh, okay. So it's simple. You just tilt your phone or your pad. This works on iPhone and iPad. And so what you do is when you hit mission start, there's a little message that some people don't notice. Actually, it's a big message that some people don't notice. It says, hold your phone in the neutral position. Okay? And so hold your phone in like a comfortable resting neutral position while the mission is loading, which only takes maybe a couple of seconds.
In other words, if this was a yoke, where would the yoke be exactly centered?
Centered, right.
Center your phone.
Yeah, just center your phone like this. And if you're lying down, that means you're like this. And if you're standing in line at the DMV, it could be like this. But center your phone in a nice, comfortable position like this while the mission is starting. And then, once you see the rocket ship moving, well, that's clearly nose down, nose up, nose left, and nose right, and you have your little buttons here for the rockets. So, at any rate, X-Plane Starship on the App Store.